On the 22nd of February 2018, YouTuber Sarah Funk would post a video titled "Finding Cyprus's Secret Red Lake." The video follows Sarah and her then boyfriend, now husband, Luis, as they take a trip to the Kokonapazula Lake, or the Red Lake of Mitsiro, back in June of 2017, while they were travelling across Europe. The lake, located in the village of Mitsiro on the island of Cyprus, had initially been home to a copper mine. However, after it was abandoned, rain flooded the site, and due to the high acidity in the area, the water turned red. When the vlog was posted, the location was relatively unknown. Only some locals and adventurous tourists knew about it. But just over a year after the vlog was posted, the lake would make headlines across the world for something truly disturbing, and Sarah would find her vlog at the center of the story.
This is what like murder episodes are made out of, okay? Because it's always like a young American couple went on vacation to Cyprus. They went to see a red lake where nobody went, but they figured out why. And like, it just never see us again.
Where are we going?
I don't know, we're gonna go up there and see what happens.
I was told that it's really hard to get here, so...
We're gonna get across this, but when you get to the edge, you gotta like, stay low, because I don't want you to fall over. Drop.
Are you sure we should even cross the barbed wire? Because maybe there's a reason for it. Ever think that?
It's because they don't want you to fall over.
So why are you crossing it?
Like, it's unbelievable.
It smells so bad here. It's like so gross. It just like feels like death. You know what I mean? So you want to try to get down to the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay. Unreal. I mean, it probably looks unreal you're seeing on video, but imagine this in real life. I mean, it's red. It's like the water is red. And the way it gets red is because the minerals from the mountains fall into here. It's toxic. You can't swim in there, but it's really pretty. Like looking at this in a picture, you think, wow, that's really cool. But when you see it in real life, it's like a whole nother level. You just feel death in the air.
The body of a missing person sits in that suitcase. They've been in there dead since the autumn of 2016. They remained that way until the spring of 2019. Cyprus is renowned for its decent weather all year round. Yes, even during the winter months, the island is home to high temperatures. According to weather spotters, on average, there are between 300 and 340 hot days per year in Cyprus, so you can see why many choose it as a destination to catch some rays. When severe rainfall turned flooding hit the island in April of 2019 then, both residents and tourists alike were left bamboozled. However, what was discovered as the result of the floods would prove even more shocking. You see, by April 14th, 2019, the weather had settled, and two German tourists, photographers, decided they wanted to head over to the Mitsiro mines as it was on their list of unique places to visit. It isn't entirely clear what route they took when they arrived, but we do know that by 3 PM, they were flagged down by 3 local bikers who were hovering around the mine shaft that had been flooded by water. The reason for the flag? Well, the bikers believed they'd just discovered a dead body but needed extra eyes to confirm. The two tourists made their way over to the shaft, and after some poking around, it was confirmed that there was a human body in the water, so the emergency services were called. The naked body was badly decomposed. They were tied up with rope and wrapped in sheets. We're treating this as a murder investigation. The body belonged to a woman who was identified as 38-year-old Mary Rose Tiburcio, a migrant worker who arrived from the Philippines in 2007. She had moved from a life of poverty in her home country to Cyprus to seek out a better life for herself. Mary was quick to settle down on the island, and before long she met a Romanian man who she'd go on to marry and have a child with. However, the pair would separate down the line. In May of 2018, both Mary and that child, her daughter 6-year-old Sierra, were reported missing by a friend who lived with them. The friend would go on to tell the authorities that the pair had left out to meet a man Mary had been romantically involved with, and that she had been introduced to him on the dating site Badoo. She even provided the police with his phone number. An investigation followed, but ultimately the case was closed after it was concluded that the pair more than likely left the country. You see, Mary's last phone ping before she went missing was near the Larnaca International Airport, so police assumed that she had left the country. But as you know, she'd be found dead just over a year after she vanished. Some unanswered questions remained then. Who did this to Mary? Where was Sierra, and was she still alive? Police would attempt to answer those questions by first questioning those closest to Mary to see if they had any information that could assist with their investigation. Several people would end up being interviewed. One of those, her estranged husband, Sierra's father. He was still living in Cyprus when Mary's body was discovered. When police visited his home, they searched the property. Sierra's passport was present, but she wasn't. They also discovered that he hadn't reported the pair missing either. So, to police, it was a no-brainer that Mary's husband was their man. Ultimately then, he was arrested on murder charges. However, the investigation was turned on its head after police spoke to Mary's friend, the one who reported her missing back in 2018. She would go on to remind detectives of what she had told them less than a year earlier. That Mary had met a man via the dating site Badoo and hadn't been seen since. So if they needed a lead, they should probably go and find him. That's exactly what they did. Police began to hunt for the mystery man, and after a search of Mary's Badoo account, he was found. Arrestees 35. The Arrestees 35 Badoo account was initially linked to two people. However, when detectives dug deeper, it was clear that only one of them had been running the account. The other was simply an innocent party who had his identity falsely used. So, who owned the account then? Well, it was someone who many would have never expected. 35-year-old Nikos Metaxas, a captain of the Cypriot National Guard. Nikos wasn't from Cyprus, but rather was born in Bulgaria to Bulgarian parents. At some point during his childhood, the family relocated to the island for reasons unknown. According to a report, his early years weren't the greatest. He couldn't speak Greek, so at school he was teased a lot. At home, his mother and father's marriage was on the rocks. In the end, she left and travelled back to Bulgaria, leaving Nikos and his father in Cyprus. Life wasn't bad forever though. As the years went by, Nikos started to settle down and began to focus on his future. He wanted to become a soldier. His army journey began by heading over to Greece to join a military academy. He enrolled for 4 years, then graduated, got married, had 2 daughters, and then returned to Cyprus to join the National Guard. Over the years, he worked his way up to the rank of captain. Although those in the military knew him as a hard-working man who kept to himself, he was a man dedicated to his work. Anything that was asked of him by his superiors, he carried out without question. Nothing would have ever suggested he was a man capable of committing murder. He appeared somewhat introverted socially. He was reserved. The reality was, he had a dark side, one that he kept hidden from most, including his now ex-wife. She did have a taste of what he was really like though, back in June of 2018. By that point their marriage was falling apart and they had been separated for quite a while, so she asked him for a divorce. His response? He became enraged, grabbed her by the throat and said, "You don't know what I'm capable of." When Nikos was brought in for questioning just 5 days after Mary's body was discovered, he denied the charges. However, when detectives presented the evidence they had against him, which included rope that was found at his home that was identical to the one used on Mary, pictures of him at the mine, meaning he knew the location, and proving that his IP was connected to the Badoo account, he cracked. So, what happened? Well, on the day of her disappearance, she did go to meet Nikos. Although, it wasn't the first time she had done. They'd actually met 3 times before. According to Nikos, by the 4th occasion, they both wanted to take the relationship further, so the next logical step was for both to meet each other's children. Nikos told investigators that he invited Mary and Sierra over to his to spend the night with him and his 2 daughters. He stated that the night went well and then the children were taken to bed so he could have some alone time with Mary. However, during the alone time, Sierra began to cry and then suddenly stopped. Mary then went to check on her to see if she was okay, but when she got to the room, Sierra wasn't breathing. Nikos said he grabbed Sierra by the neck and shook her to see if it would help, but it didn't. At that time, I saw the little girl dead in my daughter's bed. I cannot describe how I felt. My whole world collapsed and I panicked. Mary screamed continuously, so I grabbed her by the throat and told her to stop. I don't remember how long for because emotions were running high. I lost track of time. What I do remember though is that I tried to check both of their pulses when I calmed down. What I had done then sunk in, and at that moment I panicked because I was afraid of what would happen to my children if I went to jail. All I could think was, where am I going to hide the bodies? Mary's body, as you know, would end up at the bottom of the mine shaft at Mid-Zero mine. However, Sierra's body was thrown into the Mimi mine lake, 10 miles away. As soon as Nikos gave up Sierra's location, the authorities sent a search party to the lake to hopefully recover her body. But as they did, the team who continued the search down the mine shaft were about to stumble on another body. And spoiler alert, it wasn't Sierra. 28-year-old Arian Palanas Lozano's body would be recovered from the Mid-Zero mine shaft. She had moved to Cyprus from the Philippines in February of 2017 to remove herself from a life of poverty, just like Mary. When she touched down on the island, she managed to find a decent paid job as a live-in housemaid for a former chief of police. In July of 2018, he went on vacation and left Arian with the keys to the house. She was free to use it as she wanted whilst he was gone. However, according to a friend, Arian opted to spend her time doing odd jobs away from the house for extra cash and spent time going on dates with men. On the 23rd of July 2018, she went on one of those dates with a man she had met on Badoo. However, she'd never return home. When the former police chief completed his holiday, he reported Arian as a missing person. And although the investigation was thorough, police wouldn't be able to find her. It isn't entirely clear why detectives didn't search her Badoo account at the time of the investigation, because had they done that, they would have found a person of interest. Nikos Metaxas. What a shocker. Nikos was the last person to have had contact with Arian before she went missing. When detectives asked him if he had anything to do with Arian's disappearance and death, he admitted that he did. I met Arian through Badoo in July of 2018. We ended up having sex, and when I began to climax, I felt the need to kill her. I was on top of her, and I saw her life disappear as I was choking her. I didn't feel bad, it felt good. Investigators had gathered evidence against Nikos while he was in custody to A, strengthen their case against him, and B, to see if he was connected to any more disappearances. What police found on his Facebook messages, ladies and gentlemen, was truly disturbing, because believe it or not, Nikos Metaxas was the last person to be in contact with another, yes, another missing person. This time, 31-year-old Maricar Valdez Arquiola. She had been reported missing in December of 2017. He hadn't just been the last person to be in contact with her though, he also had a picture of her temporary residency permit saved on his phone. The image had been snapped 2 months after her disappearance. Maricar had moved to Cyprus in 2015 after she had split from her boyfriend, the father of her child. Her mother had been living on the island at the time and advised her to head over for a fresh start, although it meant she'd have to leave her son behind with his father. Maricar's mother told her not to worry, as there were opportunities to make some decent money to send back to the Philippines to provide her son with the life that she never had. So that's exactly what she did. When she arrived, she picked up work as a housekeeper, but as you know, just 2 years on, she'd vanished without a trace. On the 13th of December 2017, Maricar had arranged to go to a house party with her friend, Margie. However, she'd never arrive. Instead, Margie received a text message stating that she wouldn't be attending and in fact would be leaving the area for a while. "I'm going to Ledra. I can't be around here anymore. I can't live without him." By this point, Maricar had been in a long-term relationship, but her boyfriend had recently passed away on the 1st of December 2017, and so it looked then as if she wanted to spend some time away by herself to heal and clear her head. But as the days went on, no one could reach her as her phone was off. So her mother, employer, and friends not only reported her missing to the police, but also started a social media campaign to try and find her. Despite the fact there was a huge buzz around the story, it never led to any major leads, so eventually it died down. That was until 2 months later, when out of nowhere, a member of the public found Maricar's temporary residency permit in a neighborhood in Cyprus's capital, Nicosia. Even though there was this breakthrough, it ultimately led to nothing, and so the case remained cold. But then police searched Nikos Metaxas' Facebook messages, and a huge breakthrough happened because he was the last person to have contact with her before her disappearance. When police questioned him, he denied even knowing who she was, let alone have anything to do with her disappearance. But once investigators told him that they've seen the Facebook messages, he cracked. He would tell them that he had mutual friends with Maricar and had her as a Facebook friend for quite a while. So when he saw that her boyfriend died, he felt that she'd be an easy target to kill because she was vulnerable. Nikos would message Maricar on Facebook under the alias Orestes Arquiola and told her if she needed any assistance through that difficult period, then to let him know because he'd be there to help. On the 13th of December 2017, Maricar accepted that help and asked Nikos if he could give her a lift to her late boyfriend's brother's home for reasons that are never stated. Nikos, of course, agreed to take her, but as you know, she'd never make it. It isn't entirely clear what happened when he picked her up, but we do know that she ended up at Nikos' home. He then raped and killed her. Maricar was then stuffed in a suitcase and was dumped in the Red Lake of Mitsiro. Now before you go thinking, why didn't anyone tell the police that she was going to meet her late boyfriend's brother? Well, that's because, for some reason, she didn't tell anyone. And for those of you wondering, yes, it was Nikos who sent those messages to Margie about leaving the area. Believe it or not, Margie nearly ended up as a victim in this case as well. You see, when Maricar's temporary residency permit was found by a member of the public, Margie made some posts on Facebook to appeal for any information about her friend's whereabouts, and shortly after, none other than Nikos Metaxas messaged her. You see, he shared many mutual friends with Margie as well, so when he told her that he had vital information about Maricar's disappearance, she was all ears. Nikos told Margie that he would need to meet with her in person by herself, as he couldn't reveal the information online or over the phone because members of the police force were behind the disappearance. Initially, Margie was hesitant about meeting up and insisted that they spoke over the phone. But eventually she agreed, so long as they could meet in public, and she was allowed to bring someone. Nikos didn't want to do that though, he wanted to meet privately. In the end, Margie felt like Nikos was trolling her, so she decided to cut all contact with him. What she didn't know was that she was speaking to the man who murdered a friend in cold blood.
He's just trying to ask me to go out with him, like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and then maybe when he noticed that I don't have chance to get him out with him, and he start to talk about something that he said it's dangerous, very serious, and it's about my friend Maricar. I didn't meet with him because, of course, how I know if he's just playing with us, he just using my friend to meet with me. That's why I'm wondering how he knows about my friend Maricar. I'm thinking also that maybe in a post of Facebook that he found out about it and he's taking advantage and he's using about my friend to meet with me.
On April 25th, 2018, Nikos Metaxas told investigators, "I'm bored and I want to go to jail. Bring me a piece of paper, I'll write everything down for you." He was about to confess to 3 other murders, but first he wanted to clear up why he actually killed Mary and Sierra. Side note though, detectives made it clear that they don't believe either of the testimonies regarding the murder of Mary and Sierra. "I killed Mary because she hinted on one occasion that I could have sex with her daughter. When she came to my house, I asked her if I could and she told me yes, but I'd have to wait until she's slightly older. That disgusted me, so I flew into a fit of rage and strangled Mary to death. Once I had calmed down, I went to my daughter's bedroom where Sierra had been sleeping and strangled her to death to set her free from this cruel world." The next murder Nikos would admit to would be that of Nepal native 30-year-old Asmita Karknabista, who moved to Cyprus to support her family back home, including her 13-year-old son. It isn't entirely clear when she moved to Cyprus, but we do know that when she touched down on the island, she found employment as a live-in housemaid. But over time, the family who lived at the property began invading her privacy, so she left the home to stay with a friend. After leaving the home, Asmita had just 2 weeks to find a new employer or face breaking her visa conditions. Unfortunately, she would break those conditions because she disappeared during the 2 weeks. According to her friend, she was spotted getting into a white car with an unidentified man in Cyprus's capital, Nicosia. That man? Nikos Metaxas, of course. Asmita was reported missing by both the friend she was staying with and her employer for breaking the terms of her visa. But of course, she'd never be found because Nikos killed her within a few hours of meeting her. Just like Arian, he killed her while climaxing during sex. Following the murder, he dumped her lifeless body in a secluded well at an army shooting range. The last 2 murders Nikos admitted to were actually the first 2 victims, mother and daughter 36-year-old Livia Florentina Buena and 8-year-old Elena. Livia had moved to Cyprus from Romania way back in 2006 with her then husband to seek out a better life for herself. In 2008, Livia would give birth to Elena, but shortly after, she'd split from her husband for reasons that were never stated. What is known though is that all parties would stay on the island and Elena would keep in regular contact with her father. In September of 2016, Livia and Elena suddenly disappeared one evening after leaving their home. After a couple of days went by and no one could get in contact with the pair, they were reported missing. An investigation was opened into the disappearances, but in the end, the police came to the conclusion that the mother and daughter had left the country. The police never asked me for a statement about the disappearances. They simply told me that Livia and Elena had left the country. We told police that Elena had health problems, so Livia wouldn't have left her medication at the house. It's also out of character for Livia to have just packed up and left. She would have told someone. Family and friends felt like something nefarious had occurred, so they approached a journalist who worked for Cyprus's answer to the BBC, and believe it or not, after looking at the case, they agreed that something was off and decided to air the story for thousands to see. The journalist pointed out that the main flaws with the police's theory was that why would a mother leave clothes, passports, money and Eleanor's medication at home if they were going to leave the country? That question remained unanswered for over 3 years until Nikos Metaxas told detectives that they couldn't have left the country because he murdered them. On the day of their disappearance, Livia and Elena had travelled to Nikos' home to spend the evening together. Livia and Nikos had been speaking on Badoo for a while up until that point. Nikos stated that he had a feeling that Elena was being exploited by her mother, and so in a fit of rage, he strangled her to death, and then strangled Elena to death to set her free from this life of exploitation. He then stuffed their lifeless bodies in 2 separate suitcases and dumped them in the Red Lake of Mitsiro. What should be noted though is that just like in the case of Mary and Sierra, police don't believe that was the actual motive behind the murders. When Nikos gave his final confession, police had only recovered the bodies of Mary, Arian and Asmita. Maricar, Livia, Eleanor, and Sierra were still missing. It took search teams a total of 48 days to recover the last 4 bodies because they'd been dumped in bodies of water. Once they were recovered, the case against Nikos could move forward. In the end, he pled guilty to all the charges that were placed against him, and on the 24th of June 2019, he was handed 7 life sentences. He'll die in prison.